war. And what happens if Iran starts with us? Who's going to make that decision? So we got to get this guy out of there. Pence has to go in, and what I do predict is he's going to make a deal. And I'll see if I'm wrong. I'll call back in a week or so if I'm right. But they're going to give him – Pence is going to take over, and then probably about a week and a half he's going to get pardoned like Nixon did, and he's going to get out because that's the only way he's going to get out of this deal. And I'm just so disappointed with this guy, where he's come from and what he's done to this country the last couple months. You know, be a man, own up to it. You lost the election. There's no way you're going to win the election. Let's move on and make it better for everybody in this country. Everybody in this country has to step back, look back, and treat everybody with respect, because we're not going to get anywhere till everybody stops fighting.
There's no doubt about that. No doubt about that. We've been fighting for years. Right. And what I've tried to do here for 14 years is to basically provide a forum for people like yourself to express yourself and get it off your chest. And I think people need to listen to what you said, and I think people need to listen to what other people say here. Because and
the last thing too, Dan, is just one more other point. The people in the Congress and in the House, they've been fighting for years. Okay, they got to get their act together. This country could be so much better if we could just unite.
Couldn't agree with you more, Joe. I want to get one more in here before the break. I hope you call
very much.
The show more often. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Here we're going to go next. Anna in Fall River. Anna, next on night. Hi, Anna. How are you?
Fine. How are you?
Good, Anna.
I would just like to say, to ask the callers that still think that President Trump won the election. Why President Trump thinks that only the states that he lost, that people and illegal voting took place. The states that he won, there was no dead people that voted. A message from the president or chancellor of Germany. She said, I liked her remarks. She said, in elections, some win and there are the losers and the winners. But what comes down to is democracy is always the winner.
Right. Well, I love the idea of democracy, and I think that there's a lot of things going on and that will fall out of this that are going to hurt democracy. You see some censorship coming in now, and
but President Trump indirectly invaded.
And when the next election comes up,
the Capitol is a sacred place. It's where the laws that rule the democracy was born, the laws that protected our rights and freedom is preserved and was established. It's a sacred place. The Capitol is a place more sacred to me and to many people than any church of any denomination.
Well, different people look at churches as very sacred places too, and I would hope you would respect that point of view. And I hate to do this to you. I got you in, but I'm up in my 10:30 news break, so I got to let you go. But we will talk again, okay?
From his own pocket, he should pay for the damages.
All right, you got the final word. Thank you, Anna. Have a great night. Coming back right after the 10:30 news with Don Huff. We'll be talking with Alan Dershowitz around 10:45.
Nightside with Dan Rea on WBZ, Boston's News Radio.
Salesforce presents a mini meditation. Unplug your mind, Minneapolis, leaving all your devices to their own devices. Ignore your smartphones, headphones, tablets, gadgets. Let them all recharge so you can refocus on your customer. On your path to customer success, focus your teams with a single 360-degree view of your customer with Salesforce Customer 360. Find customer focus at salesforce.com/360.
Nightside with Dan Rea on WBZ, Boston's News Radio.
Let's keep it rolling. I'm going to go to Steve in Cambridge. Hey, Steve, how are you tonight?
Well, Dan, yourself?
Excellent, sir. Excellent. Thanks for calling in. What's your take?
Just before November 3rd, cities all over the country started boarding up their windows
This is true.
I think it was because they were afraid that if Donald Trump prevailed, BLM and its supporters would riot. Did you hear any leaders of BLM or any Democratic leaders tell their followers not to be violent or not to riot?
I can't think of any specifically. I would hope that in various cities people spread the word. But I think you're accurate in that the riots of last summer concerned people in various cities, including Boston. And ironically, the riots that occurred, frankly, in January were not Antifa or were not Black Lives Matter, but they were were Donald Trump supporters. So there's a lot of irony go around here, Steve.
And Dan, all the time that BLM was rioting and protesting and defacing monuments and buildings, etc., we heard from every Democrat and every news anchor that only a small percentage were engaging in this behavior. Now, in this incident that took place at the Capitol, have you heard that? Have you heard any news commentators saying that it was only a small portion of the
No, we talked about that last week. A lot of the news commentators, including Anderson Cooper and Chris Cuomo, both of CNN, were they painted with a pretty broad brush in their denunciation. Now, at the same time, there were a lot of people inside that Capitol, Steve. There were a lot of people.
Yeah, I just haven't. I personally don't know, and I haven't seen. I mean, and the other thing is, Dan, I've heard it being called an armed insurrection, but as far as I know, not one single shot was fired by the ralliers or the protesters. So I don't know. To call it an armed insurrection, one would think that the majority were armed. I see no evidence of that at all.
I do think that there were people who used sticks and clubs and fire extinguishers. Apparently, the police officer who died was struck on the head, from what I've read, and I haven't seen the video, by someone who threw a fire extinguisher at him. So there was a lot of physicality there. There was a lot of smashing windows and all of that. I mean, were there people walking around like they had been in Michigan in April, with AKs slung over their shoulder or M16s? No, but I think that there was it was way beyond a protest. You and I both. Oh yeah,
I agree, Dan. Last thing is, if you have an extra 30 seconds with Professor Dershowitz.
Yep.
Would you ask him or what he thinks of the people like me who say that possibly these 60 court decisions were based almost entirely on procedural issues rather than evidentiary matters? If he has any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll ask him that. But again, I don't want to presume his answer, but it would seem to me that when you're going into court, particularly looking for injunctive relief, which is, I think, what they were looking for. You have to show the damage is great, and that the damage is imminent, and if the injunction is not extended or the hearing isn't extended, irreparable harm can be done. It's sort of the irreparable harm standard, and I think that is going to be his answer, and I think his answer is that there was no judge who was convinced that the damage was so great that it was going to irreparably harm the process. But let's see what he says, okay?
Dan, thanks for a great show tonight.
As always, thank you for joining us. Thank you. Appreciate it. 617-254-1030, 888-929-1030. Let me try to get everybody in here before we get to Alan Dershowitz, John in Framingham. John, next on Nightside.
How you doing?
Good, sir.
Good. Okay. That last call was pretty good, but I want to add a couple other things. Do you think making people angry or inciting them? And Nancy Pelosi ripped the State of the Union address in half.
No, we mentioned that. No, she shredded that. Now, again, I guess one would argue that was a form of speech, although it was not verbal speech.
No, it's inappropriate.
Well, I think it was very inappropriate, and I think that again, I think the Republicans, if they had been smart, they would have focused on things like that. Because what happens is we have a short attention span, and people, when you mention something like that, oh yeah, they remember that. But if you don't mention it, it doesn't come to everybody's mind. Sui sponte, as the people who know Latin would say.
Well, yeah, I know, but Trump was on a roll. The virus hits, and that's what killed him. And it's just that simple. And, he's complaining about
his handling. His handling of the virus. It was the virus, but it was also his handling of the virus. It'll be gone by Easter.
Yeah, well, they didn't know what they were talking about. Even the other people didn't know what they were talking about. And that panic thing, well, we didn't have any masks or other protective clothing in the whole country. So,
but then why are you doing? Tell me about the narcissism and the hubris that you're doing an interview with Bob Woodward in February of 2020 and telling Woodward
yeah.
the truth. And I mean, who was advising him? I mean, it just seems. I think that some people say, "Well, it's wonderful that Bob Woodward got the truth, and then he was able to put the truth out there." But if you're Donald Trump, I mean, are you that narcissistic that you think that you're going to be able to persuade Bob Woodward, who probably instinctively is not a Donald Trump fan? I mean,
no, and Woodward held on to it too. So I mean,
well, of course he did. It was.
Wise guys.
No, but what I'm saying is, who was giving Donald Trump? Would any press person say, I think it's a great idea for you to do about a dozen phone calls with Woodward? Oh, yeah, and he's going to tape the calls? Great idea, Mr. President. That's his narcissism and his hubris. You look at all of it. And were there things he did when we talked the other night with callers about, again, reestablishing our relationship with NATO, what he did in the Middle East, what he did for black colleges and universities, what he did in the First Step Back. You can go on and on and on. There were a lot of good things he did. But at the end of the day, he was his own worst enemy.
He was, and he was on. Well, like I said, I watched that, and I didn't think he incited a riot. If so, they can charge him with that. I don't think he's guilty.
Neither did Alan Dershowitz.
Yeah. So at this point, what has he done since Election Day? He's basically destroyed 2 Georgia senators. Well, we're all going to get another $1,400 if what I'm hearing is true. You
think the Democrats would want him to stick around?
Yeah, no, they should send the money.
All right, John, I got to run. I got to get to Alan Dershowitz, okay? I'll tell him you said hi.
Closely. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you, John. Talk to you soon. Delighted to be joined now by Professor Harvard Emeritus Law Professor Alan Dershowitz. Professor Dershowitz, welcome back to Nightside, my friend.
Well, thanks. I'm not sure I'm so proud to be a graduate or a professor at Harvard and a graduate of Yale Law School these days. You see that over 5,000 students from Harvard, Yale, and other elite schools, and many of their professors just signed a petition trying to disbar Senators Ted Cruz and Joshua Hawley because of speeches they made in the United States Senate. Speeches I disagreed with, but unbelievably that law students and law professors would want to disbar reminds me of McCarthyism.
Yeah, it is.
McCarthyism, and they were disbarring lawyers for representing people that were unpopular. In those days, communists and socialists and pinkos and fellow travelers. But these students and professors are emulating McCarthyism. They say you can't be a member of the bar, you can be disbarred if you challenge democracy, if you stand up, if you don't respect the courts, all of that. It's just what they did back in the 1950s. It's so appalling.
It's frightening, and we've seen it on college campuses, developing on college campuses for years. Let's deal, and I'm glad you mentioned Senators Cruz and Hawley and this call. It's a strange time, Alan. It was a strange time in the 1950s. Again, I've called it for many years McCarthyism of the left. Okay, let's talk about the 3 options that Nancy Pelosi is considering, and that would be in her dream world. Donald Trump to resign, for Donald Trump to be removed under the 25th Amendment, or for him to be impeached in this, what we now have less than 9 days.
Two-thirds of them are unconstitutional. The only one that would be constitutional would be